Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to the METUS Tech Show. Today, we're going to be speaking with Dana Fischer to talk about rebates, heat pump incentives, and all things government. But first, the METUS Minute.
Today's METUS Minute is about pressure testing and triple evacuation. After all equipment and line set has been installed, it's important to verify that the system is free of leaks. The system should always be clean, tight, and dry. To ensure a tight system on a Mitsubishi equipment, pressurize the system using nitrogen. The system should be pressure tested at 600 psi for a minimum of 24 hours. Now, you'll want to make sure that there is no pressure drop after the system has been left under pressure. There may be slight variations in pressure depending on if there are drastic changes in temperature during the 24 hours the system is under pressure, as nitrogen does have a temperature and pressure relationship. After verifying no pressure drop, the system needs to be evacuated of any moisture. To do this, you'll need a vacuum pump, vacuum-rated hoses, Schrader core removal tool, and a micron gauge. Drying a vacuum will lower the boiling point, allowing any moisture in the system to boil off into a gas. First, evacuate the system to 4,000 microns, then reintroduce nitrogen to break the vacuum. Next, evacuate to 1,500 microns and break again with nitrogen. Finally, evacuate the system to 500 microns. Once you've reached 500 microns, isolate the vacuum pump from the micron gauge and system and conduct a rise test to ensure that the microns do not increase over a 1-hour period. This will ensure that all moisture has been removed from the system. Thank you, and let's start the show.
The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The METUS Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
So, Dana, you have to tell me about this. You just said a little while ago, you told me you and your wife have been eating a pint of ice cream a day, and you lost weight. Now, I've been eating a pint of ice cream a week, and I've gained like 100 pounds.
Yeah, no, it's kind of something that we wandered into just a couple of weeks ago. We picked up one of those, ice cream machines that you can get, at any one of the box stores, and we do a lot of cooking and a lot of plant-based, meals, and so we've been making ice cream using all plant-based. So it's, and all different kinds of recipes too. So, super interesting, super tasty stuff with like yogurt and blueberries or, and like bananas as a base with cauliflower as a base. That seems like a really strange thing, but it's a very neutral flavor.
You just lost
and
me
then,
there.
And you put chocolate and marzipan or something in there, and essence, and like you don't taste it at all. And the machines that, you make a smoothie, basically freeze it overnight, 24 hours, and then, it goes into the ice cream grinder that turns it into that sort of soft serve consistency. And it's unbelievably delicious. And, you're getting your fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've actually,
I'm curious now. I got to try it.
I might go buy one too, but I'm afraid because, just the whole...
Well, you like pumpkin pie, right?
Not really, no.
Well, okay. So, some people like pumpkin pie. And we used actually like canned pumpkin and like with some cashew nut to help with the, the sort of the texture of it. And, we put graham cracker into it and like, some soy milk and to kind of get the right texture or thickness. And the next day, it was phenomenal. Of course, with the spices, right? So you get, cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff in there, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is like pumpkin pie soft serve.
I love pie, but pumpkin pie I'm not crazy about pumpkin, but give me some key lime pie, we're talking. So.
Well, I think you could do that too, like if you could easily do like a lime recipe and like totally make it.
So let me ask you, does this thing come with a recipe book, or is this something you're finding? How are you getting these recipes?
Well, we're mostly winging it, but like there's got to be a million YouTubers that are all out there, trying to get the viral or whatever. So you can Google it, and there's a million people making all these different kinds of smoothies, and some of them, are really healthy, and some of them are not particularly healthy. It's like
timing is everything. And my wife lately, like she started like a week ago, wants me to drink a smoothie, and she's putting like kale and banana and and all these things in here. She's trying to give me have this instead of dinner. And how about I have this and then dinner? But I love ice cream, and I think this might be something where I can actually stomach the smoothies.
It's it's a terrible hardship to eat, half a pint of ice cream every night. But like you sort of mentioned, seriously, after 2 weeks, I don't know exactly how this worked, but after 2 weeks of this, I had lost 3-4 pounds. I'm like, well, I don't know.
I've actually used that machine before. With Fairlife makes a really high protein, low sugar milk because it's ultra filtered or whatever, and I made it with that, and it just tastes like chocolate ice cream. Yeah. You might put a little bit of chocolate syrup in there, or maybe even a little piece of candy.
Snickers,
but it's a much healthier version,
Yeah.
and taste wise, it's negligible. It pretty much tastes exactly the same.
Yeah, no, and we got a couple of peach trees in our front yard, and so of course. It's there's an excess of peaches, and I just stuff them into a bag in the freezer, and we just, did a sorbet one night with just basically straight frozen peaches and some soy milk or vanilla, whatever, I don't know, and it was unbelievable.
So this is just like a blender, and you put ice, frozen, whatever.
Yeah, so you have to use a blender or whatever bullet or something to make your smoothie, and it goes into the pint-sized receptacle, and you freeze it for 24 hours, and then it plugs into, and I think there are a couple of different machines, but it basically goes into the machine, and it has a blade on it that's super tough and just chews through that rock hard frozen block of pint, and 3 minutes later, 6 minutes later, you've got something that's the consistency of soft serve, and it's just delicious.
Now, you're not required to eat the whole pint in a sitting, even though you may. So the actual pint-sized containers come with the machine. So it's just like a bullet where it comes with the container, so you just kind of pulse it, and then the actual blender portion
you can
is
keep
your
it in the freezer
vessel.
or whatever else like that, but it never lives. Yeah. It's just gone.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably what you and I should be eating.
Yeah.
But what's your favorite Ben & Jerry's flavor?
Oh, now we're talking. I like the Cherry Garcia, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
I love that one. And I don't know what it's called, but there's one that has chocolate, but also has salted pretzel pieces.
Oh,
in there. Is it Chubby Hubby? Is it?
Yes.
No?
It could be.
But I just went for ice cream this past weekend. My wife and I, the local ice cream place opened. And we went there, and I never know what flavor it is. I just go to the person behind there. It's usually a teenager, and they go, "What's the chocolatiest thing you have?" And they go, "I have chocolate chip with chocolate this and chocolate that and chocolate." Okay, that's what I want, And you get I get the kitty. 3 scoops.
That's one big kitty.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's right next to this place, all the cows where they get the milk from, and they get.
Yeah. No, I think I've been to that place. It's down the farm, down in Sterling or whatever.
Yeah, Rhoda Springs.
Rhoda Springs is a great spot.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Yeah.
Salted caramel brownie topped pint.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is that the one?
I think so.
All right, yeah. So mine, I go for everything. I do the New York Super Fudge Chunk. Okay. That's got a little bit of everything in it. That's my go-to Ben & Jerry's flavor. We just ruined everything that Dana was trying to.
Don't they have one called Everything But the? With an ellipses?
Everything But the is pretty much New York Super Fudge Chunk with even more bits and pieces. There's barely any ice cream in it. Yeah. And, I didn't realize for the longest time you're not supposed to eat the whole thing. That's enough.
Why do they put it in a personal container, a personal size container?
Yeah, it's you're supposed to take a couple of scoops and not be a slob and eat that. But
it's hard to do.
It's it's the amount of ice cream that's in that Ben & Jerry's pint is enough for 4 gallons of ice cream. Yeah.
See, I look at my ice cream the same way I look at pizza. Every pizza is a personal pizza if you're committed enough, and every container of ice cream is a personal container if you have the heart.
You guys ever have
a stomach?
Americone Dream.
I was just going to bring that one up. That's literally what I was going to say.
If you like waffle cones and bits of pieces of waffle cone in the ice cream with chocolate.
Oh, man.
That's
so good.
Another great one.
And the thing is on the spectrum of Ben & Jerry's, you feel the least guilty because you're it's just vanilla ice cream with some chocolate-covered waffle cone and some chocolate syrup.
Yeah.
Compared to the other ones that have all the other stuff in there.
Yeah, like that's
Although
better.
you get cherries in yours, so that's
Yeah,
a
fruit.
healthy option.
That's a fruit, actually.
Healthy
Yeah.
option.
It's a fruit serving.
but it's not cauliflower.
No.
No.
You wouldn't know it. I mean, like, it's like, is there anything that cauliflower can't do?
We'll be right back. Hey, listeners, if you like the METUS Tech Show, you should check out our YouTube channel called the METUS Training Network. That's METUS Training Network. Head on over to the METUS Training Network for tons of videos and programming made for HVAC professionals just like you. We've got technical training tips, HVAC program updates, and episodes of our new HVAC talk show called The Comfort Zone. Of course, you also get to catch up on more episodes of the METUS Tech Show as well. Head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the METUS Training Network today. Now, back to the METUS Tech Show.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I
Smell good.
Over the years, over the past 5 years, I've been doing everything with cauliflower. Cauliflower crusted pizza isn't bad.
Yeah.
If you make it yourself, it's way better than the pre-formed store-bought cauliflower crust. If you're trying to lose some weight, which I should be doing.
I'm trying to lose some weight, but I don't want to sacrifice flavor.
But
I'm going to try this ice cream because my wife has been trying to get me to drink these crazy smoothies, so I'm going to try it and see what happens. I doubt I'll lose any weight. I'll probably just do the same thing that happens the last time I went vegan.
What'll happen is in like 2 months or so, we'll be on a podcast, and he's going to talk about how he's been doing all these things with the Ninja Creamy, and he made one that was like this, and one like that, and like this, and he ate them all in one night.
Or eventually all the soy milk got replaced with heavy cream.
It's heavy cream. And
It's actually better that way. Did you know that?
heavy cream and a whole bottle of Hershey syrup.
and what I'll end up doing is I'll end up putting something in it that'll totally ruin the whole thing and make it unhealthy. That's what'll end up happening with me.
Pure cane sugar.
Yeah, throw a steak in it or something.
Anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining us on the METUS Tech Show. My name is Paul Shavs, and we are at the National Sales Meeting. With me is Bryn. Bryn, say hi.
Hi.
Bryn Raptor and Steve.
Hey.
Steve Pimentel. And our special guest today, we've brought back the one and only Dana Fischer.
Absolutely.
So,
my
Dana,
pleasure to
tell
be
us,
here today.
you were here like, I don't know, a year or so, a year and a half. It's been, time flies.
A couple of years.
Yeah,
Has it been a couple of
time
years?
flies when you're watching regulatory paint dry.
Yeah, so
Because our last national sales meeting was from
2 years ago.
New Orleans.
yeah, it was
right?
2 years
So,
ago.
yeah,
So
2
it's been
years
2
ago.
years. So just remind everybody, tell us who you are and what you do for Mitsubishi.
All right. Well, so I'm Dana Fischer. I've been with Mitsubishi since 2017 in a couple of different roles. I was an area sales manager in Maine and New Hampshire, and then I was on the utility team for the East Coast. And about 2.5 years ago, they tossed me into the regulatory briar patch, and so I've been monitoring national policy and regulatory affairs, and working with a really dedicated team of engineers who are, monitoring and involved in all the ratings and third-party audits of our equipment every year through HRI, and participating in all the committees that formulate codes and stuff. It's super exciting.
Super exciting, yes. Like watching, like you said, like reading an insurance policy.
Yeah, like you get tossed these couple 100-page PDFs, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to figure this stuff out and summarize it and figure out what's important and what's not and get the word out.
So you work a lot with the government.
Well, we watch what's happening at the different agencies, and when we've got problems, we'll reach out to them or try and resolve different issues. So like an example of that would be, one of the test criteria back from 2013, they basically eliminated the one-to-one combinations of low static. And so, we were the team that submitted a waiver to DOE, and they didn't exactly respond, but it got incorporated into the new test procedure that's potentially going into effect this summer. So we are able to elicit change and get feedback, and so we're always looking for input from the field and from all of the teams, so that we know what kind of things to address and how to make comments to win.
All right, good. So let's start off where we left off. When you were on here 2 years ago, you gave us an update on what was coming. The
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about the IRA, things. So let's get an update on that. What are some of the key things? That
So I mean, over the course of the last 2 years, I mean, not much has happened, in terms of the programs launching for the different grants. And then, of course, we had the election this past fall and a significant shift in the focus of the federal administration and the staffing that's involved in all these things. And so there's generally just been a whole lot more uncertainty in exactly how things are going to roll out. And it's difficult sometimes to separate the signal from the noise, right? That's a common phrase or whatever. And, what we're seeing, or, and we're tuned in, I try and get go to different conferences for the National Association of State Energy Officials. And, so every state has a representative that, they're the point agency in each one of the states to receive funding for low-income programs or, funding for low-income heating assistance, all that sort of jazz. And they're the conduit for all of these here in homes program funding. And by and large, while there was a little bit of a hiccup in their access to their grant portals, the states are all pretty confident that they're going to be able to receive those funds. And the programs that have launched so far, and there's 10, 12 states that have pretty much launched, like California and Maine and New York and Wisconsin, they're, for the most part, still able to access those funds and use them for a variety of purposes around low-income upgrades, whether they're electric stoves or heat pumps or whatever, and that varies very much by states. A lot of the states that haven't launched yet, it's unclear as to exactly what their timeline is. And part of that has to do with the changes that are happening at DOE. There's probably a likelihood that DOE will revisit a lot of the guidance that was kind of problematic for the states to get through and make it simpler, or just give them greater latitude in how they could use those funds. So we'll see how those go. It's going to be slow as it goes, and really unchanged over the course of the last 2 years. That total amount of funds that were available for those two rebate programs through the states here and homes, it's $8-point-something billion, which sounds like a lot of cash, but really when you divide it by the number of eligible homes, it really, even if it was used as its maximum, and you're really only going to address 0.3% of the eligible homes. So it's not a massive market changer.
Sure.
And so for the contractors out there that are, tuned into working with cap agencies or, bid VRF on, residential low-income housing, those are pockets that people should continue to pay attention to. But really the strategy for taking advantage of it is just talk to your cap agencies, whatever the normal channels are that you would be engaged in heat pump projects through your state. Those are still the tried and true mechanisms that all of that funding is going to roll through.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is the IRA is legislation that was passed by Congress and signed by the president. So it's not like somebody can just sign an executive order and say this is done. We'd have to go through Congress again to take that money away, right?
Right. Well, and so I mean, I've kind of focused on one tiny little part of IRA. IRA is this humongous package of different things and massive incentives for renewable energy and different technologies and mining and water, and this huge thing. Much, much bigger than the stuff that we're just paying attention to around state rebates. There is going to be a potential for a good portion of that, or some portion of it, at least, to get changed in the reconciliation process through Congress. It's anticipated to occur sometime like August or something like that. It looks like that's when they'll get around to the tax bill to try and extend the 2017 Tax Act. And they're going to look for funds wherever they can find them, and they're going to probably look in the IRA to see the biggest sacks and identify things that are not aligned with their current policy objectives and make those changes. Exactly how that's going to happen or what actually gets on the table or what gets pulled out, it's hard to know, but it seems unlikely that states that are under contract for their funds would be impacted. And it's also, the other thing that we care about is the 25C tax credits, right? So here's the lead into 25C.
Yeah.
That's also part of IRA. Now, the tax credits have been around for a long time. They were just modified under IRA to be beefier and really kind of focus on heat pumps. And so, there's, even if they go through the reconciliation process and they talk about 25C, there's very low chance that it would impact the availability of 25C tax credits for the current tax year. It's really unprecedented for Congress to make any changes to tax code that would impact the year that they pass the taxes. So I think at least until the dust settles, we can feel confident that we're going to be able to access those and have our customers receive those. And of course, the one sort of thing that there's a couple of things to know about 25C for this current year. One of them is that, of course, the CE standards changed. So we've revised the lists, and there's still some work in trying to identify the products that qualify under 25C for the current calendar year. We know that, it's kind of tricky for 410A products because some of the changes that they made required additional testing, and we were really planning on that because all eyes are on A2Ls and 454B. But the list of qualifying 454B products is going to be extensive. We're going to have a huge array of qualifying products. So that's all good news. The other thing is starting this calendar year 2025, any consumer that goes to file their taxes this time next year for any projects done this year, they're going to need a 4-digit PIN code associated with the manufacturer. So we've gone to the IRS and filed our little forms and gotten our PIN number, and our 4-digit PIN number is E8X7. So Echo 8, X-ray 7, Echo 8, X-ray 7. That's how you're going to just remember it. Echo 8, X-ray 7.
Great way to remember.
And so just say that 3 times and tap your shoes, and basically we're going to put that on our websites and everywhere and share that with consumers, because when they go to file their form next year, they're just going to have that 4-digit number. If 25C continues to persist in outward years beyond 2026, there will need to be a 17-digit PIN code, which we're still working out, and it'll be a sticker on the side or be based on our serial number or something, but nobody has to worry about that for a while.
All right, so I'm actually going to put a PUZ Hyperheat in my house this year. So when I go to do my taxes next year and I got that PIN that I'm going to put in there, what's the benefit to me as a taxpayer homeowner?
Right. So the 25C tax credit provides a credit on your taxes. So you have to have taxable income and owe taxes, whether you pay it over the course of the year, or whether it's at the end of the year. It doesn't really matter whether you're due a rebate or whatever, but you have to have income that would be taxable above the amount that you'd receive in the tax credit. But it's 30% up to $2,000, and that 30% is against the total installed cost and a $2,000 cap. And that cap of $2,000 is on a bucket of measures that is really just 4 things: heat pumps for space heating, heat pump water heaters, and then pellet stoves and pellet boilers. And so, if you install a heat pump water heater and a heat pump for space heating, you still have that $2,000 cap across that entire bucket. So in some ways, from a strategy perspective, assuming that the 25C is going to continue to be around, you install one in 1 year and another in another year. You could spread out multiple heat pump condensers or something like that to really maximize it and get $2,000 each year.
So what I need to do is install one on December 30th. And then another one on January 2nd.
Genius, man.
Yes.
Now, the question I have is related to that specifically. There must be a list of qualified products, or is it just any installation you do? How does that work?
We have, there are a multitude of lists, which kind of lends to the confusion. So everybody's wanted to get in and say, oh, this is a qualified list, blah, blah, blah. And so you can look at AHRI, or you can look at Energy Star. And DOE has their own search tool, and if you go to NEAP, they're all. But you can find inconsistencies between the databases depending on how they're treating the data or calculating some of the pieces. And we're still making updates to the AHRI directory in order to get that to reflect as best as we can. But we have a list on our website. So if you go to the Mitsubishi Comfort app, or the website, and you go to the section on IRA incentives or government, we have a list for both 2024 for consumers that are filing their taxes now, and we also have a letter and list for 2025, which we'll continue to update as things improve. But from the IRS, their guidance in their instructions is that the defining characteristic for a qualifying product is that it's listed by the manufacturer as qualifying.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that we're as accurate as we possibly can in what we know to qualify and not. But if the consumer has documentation, the letter from us, from our website, in their files, they don't have to send it to the IRS. But when you file, you tuck the QR, the qualifying product list into your tax files. If for whatever reason you were ever audited, that would be your resource in order to demonstrate that you installed in good faith something that qualified.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's actually a good sales point, to have that list on our website for those who want to or already do sell Mitsubishi product, take advantage of that tax credit. They can go down the list and say, this matches my application, so this is where we want to move forward.
And the criteria is created on an annual basis by CEE, the Center of Energy Efficiency. They were designated in the IRA legislation to say, and they said whatever the highest tiers, excluding advanced tier is, whatever it is, the approved tier, highest tier as of January 1st of the given year, tax year, is what is the standard for that year. So at this point in time, CEE seems to kind of go through a process where they have final board approval of their board in October timeframe. It doesn't really give a long time for us to kind of figure out what's going to qualify and not before it goes live, which has been a problem. And industry is trying to work with them to modify that timeline so that we get a better breathing space to figure out what qualifies and doesn't, and can modify, our inventory and make sure we're making contractors aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as I know, you're involved with all of that stuff and the IRA and incentives. Are you involved with anything else regulatory when it comes to the A2L transition?
Sure. We go to the ASHRAE conferences and participate in ASHRAE 15 and 15.2 and SNAP and 90.1 and we're on all the HRI committees as well. So we try and monitor that and then communicate the regulatory limitations to the product development teams and the people that are doing the literature, and try and just make sure everything is uniform and accurate as best as we can. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of confusion around that. So
there is, and it's important to have us there, kind of.
Yeah, and the timelines are, we're in the midst of the transition for residential, and the timeline for VRF is next year, and so it's tricky, but ultimately, if contractors are able to purchase R410A product this year, we're not bringing in any new R410A outdoor units right now, so any restrictions associated with that aren't really applicable. But so if you can buy it off the shelf now, you can install it during this entire calendar year, and R410A parts and equipment and R410A itself will be available long into the future. There's really no harm or foul in installing any of the equipment that's residual. I highly encourage it. Yeah. And then, A2Ls, it's really, it's new to us, but A2L refrigerants have been used in Europe for, and Japan and across Asia for more than a decade. And it's just not a big deal. And, all the concern and trepidation around this is lightly flammable or something, it's ultimately people are going to kind of get used to it and shrug, and it's just really not that much of a hazard. So
I agree 100%.
Yeah, we're in the pain point right now of adjustment, and some people don't like to adjust. Yeah. So there's a lot of pushback, I find, in general across the industry, whether it's technician or on the contract or sales end. There's some conflict there, and I think a lot of that is just the adaptation and learning how we have to apply products now, and there may be some slight changes, maybe more considerable changes, but at the end of the day, once you make the adjustment and you finally embrace change, a lot of times it just kind of smooths itself out.
Yeah, just a couple extra things to kind of keep in mind as you're designing out your system. And frankly, as we move towards more and more products coming our way that are air to water, those are going to fill in those gaps and allow all the different applications, where there's concerns or considerations around too much refrigerant.
Yeah. So remove the headaches.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Going back to that tax credit, now electrical panels, upgrading your electrical panel, was that part of that? And I remember a couple of years ago that was part of that tax credit.
So I think so. Electrical panels are part of. So there's two buckets within 25C. There's a $1,200 bucket that's sort of conventional measures, but includes electrical work, and then there's the $2,000 cap credit that's just those four technologies: heat pump, water heaters, heat pumps, pellet stoves, pellet boilers. So there is a tax credit, but I think it's limited to like 30% up to $600.
Oh, okay.
Out of that $1,200 pocket. So, under the umbrella of 25C, it's those two buckets, $1,200 and $22,000. So if you did, panel upgrade, doors, whatever, you could max out that $1,200 bucket. And then if you did a heat pump, you could max out the $2,000 bucket and get up $3,200 in tax credits per year, again, as long as the program is in operation under its current format. I mean, there were also, provisions under the low income, HERE program for the different states that would allow states to offer, rebates to homeowners for installing panels associated with heat pump products too. But again, that varies very much by the states. The states have total discretion to decide what measures they're going to include in their program and the dollar amount.
Okay.
Cool. Up to the limits that are in the guidance.
Yeah.
Now, are you familiar with what we're doing with the span panel?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So how does that play into all of that?
Well, that's a whole different category. So demand response is something that, Mitsubishi engineers have been working on, and not just with SPAN, but also with, the new Comfort app is going to incorporate some of that capability in future years. And there's an AHRI 1380 standard that's currently slated to become part of the CEE standard for requirement for rebates, for tax credits, I should say, starting next year. We're still hashing out some of that, but demand response is kind of one of these things that, it's like a slow train. It's been coming for so long, and people are anticipating it. I mean, how long ago did we come out with the U-Snap adapter? I mean, was that 10 years ago?
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah.
And I mean, there just hasn't been any uptake for it. The utilities haven't been organized to take advantage of it. And so, here we are on the cusp of this launch of all this technology across industry for demand response to reduce burden on the grid.
I forgot all about the U-Snap.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it all falls into that same category. And so, as we roll these things out, as the certifications come out, and we're getting there, are the utilities going to step up and start using the capabilities that are in heat pumps in order to reduce the burden, whether it's through SPAN or through our Comfort app, or what I mean? We don't really know, and my crystal ball is still hazy as ever.
Yeah, for our listeners that are wondering what the SPAN panel is, we did have an episode with the people from SPAN probably a couple of years ago, going back probably 30 or 40 episodes. But if you want more information on that smart home breaker panel, is basically what it is, listen to that episode.
Yeah, it's super cool. Just having the technology that's able to interact with our inverter control and just totally dial down the compressor to whatever percentage you want of electrical draw is super cool.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Mark Kuntz has one installed in his house. He has a lot of We're going to have Mark on this podcast and talk about his home and how that
he's living it.
Yeah, he's got a very.
And he showed some pretty cool graphics at the
DSG conference.
Conference last year or 2 years ago, I guess. He showed a lot of really cool graphics that he pulled from apps and things that he has equipped in the home to show what was really going on during peak hours, and it was pretty cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
He's like an energy geek when it comes to all this stuff.
It's a hobby of his.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's basically the power companies are paying him.
Yeah,
that's basically what's happening.
And I think he installed some of the solar panels on his home. He had his kids up on the roof and stuff. So I'm dying to talk to him about that.
All.
Well, speaking of installing, right? So in my case, I get a PUZ, I install it. I'm going to put a PVA in there. For me to get the tax credit, I'm going to need an invoice from a contractor saying that I paid a contractor to put it in, correct?
Yep. Yeah. You have to have an invoice for, the cost of the project.
Yep.
Yeah. There's no specification in the criteria around the installation itself, for the tax credits. Obviously, most rebate programs in most states, if you're going to also double down and get funds from, like whatever rebate program from the utility or the mass save or whatever, you have to use a qualifying installer. You need the contractors out there should get connected with those if they aren't already. But the tax credits are really just what was the cost, have the invoices associated with it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get my brother's company it's actually my nephew's running it now. I'm going to have to get him to install it for me because if I do it myself, I'm going to miss out on the rebates.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah, that's when I just got out of a van, that was when a lot of that stuff was going on. We had to be HPIN, which was a heat pump installer network, and we had to go through a certain level of training to be able to be a qualified heat pump installer to be able to go after those rebates for customers. So,
and that's where the training comes in. I mean, like,
right.
One of the things that, we're all working on and, we're engaging in, we get questions from the individual states, like, how do we identify who's qualified and, what kind of training should we set up? And I'm always sending them to Paul. I'm like, hey, give Paul a call, and you should just use our training because, we that's what we do, every day is trying to help contractors totally rock.
I want to talk about that for a second. So I worked a lot with the DOE in the last few years, and we were the first manufacturer to be energy skilled recognized for our training. And basically what that is if you're a contractor and one person from your company, is energy skilled trained, you're on their list first of all. But I think the most important benefit here is once I send the information to the DOE, you're going to get free search engine optimization. So when somebody in your zip code or area searches for heat pump or energy efficiency heating or whatever, your company name is going to go to the top. So there are a couple of ways that you can get this energy skill training. If you have been to our 2-day M&P class anywhere, whether it's one of our locations or a distributor location, in the last 3-4 years, I forget the exact date is, but if you've been to that 2-day training, all you have to do is go to our training, the website, and register for an e-learning, which is, I think, 2 or 3 hours of e-learning, and then you are energy skill trained. If you, and if you want to do the whole thing, you can also do it all as an e-learning. It would take about 5 or 6 hours. So you can do it a hybrid version if you've already taken the 2-day class or plan on it, or the full e-learning, which is just it's on demand. Once you do that, there's a release that you sign and you send to us every 3-4 weeks or so. I send the list to the DOE, and you get on their list. And it's for no other reason. Search engine optimization, you usually have to pay for that, and this is just free. It's done for you. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, well, and it's a trend. I mean, like, the number of programs that are requiring contractor training across the country is increasing. Yep. And so if you're in part of the country where that is kind of coming online and the policymakers are kind of tossing around like, how are we going to do this training? We want to make a requirement, blah, blah, blah. Give us the heads up. We'll reach out to them or, put them in touch with us, and we'll make it so that our training that you're already engaged in qualifies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of what we did with that program. We have had existing training for a long time. And I think you were involved in making a video. Chris Warren was involved. And part of that was just to build a program specifically designed for this function. So, we'll usually make it work.
Advantage, yeah.
Excellent. So, Dana, where can, going forward, even with the 454B equipment, where can a contractor, business owner, someone go to find out this information? What website? Is it MitsubishiComfort.com?
Yeah, I mean, like, we try and post a good amount of information on MitsubishiComfort.com, and I get down to Swanee every 4 to 6 weeks or so and work closely with our video team and try and provide some updates there. So, keep an eye on our video channel, and I'll try and sneak my way into the schedule here at the podcast because, it's no end to the discussion about recipes for smoothies.
And by the way, on the METUS Training Network, we have a little section called Dana's Domain. That's where you're putting your little updates up
it's
there.
kind of fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not always so little. Sometimes they're big updates.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I'm sure listeners are sick and tired of hearing my little plug in. We'll be right
In the
back.
middle of the episode.
Yeah.
Well,
we talk about the METUS Training Network.
And I mean, like, you know, we were kind of kicking this around. I mean, here we are. What is it? Was it Liberation Day or something like? Is that what today is?
Yeah.
So that we're recording this. So it's like we know that there are going to be things that happen around tariffs,
Right. And
but we don't know exactly what they're going to be.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to say, let's address the elephant in the room. You know, tariffs in some way, shape, or form. As of right now, as of the recording of this episode, there haven't been any announcements as to what's going to happen. So we just assume. Yeah. So how would tariffs impact our business, our industry?
Well, the tariffs on aluminum and steel already are impacting us. Mm-hmm. You know, it's increasing the costs for everyone that's, you know, not using, you know, directly sourced or poured U.S. Steel and aluminum, which is a huge portion of all the HVAC equipment from all the manufacturers. And so, you know, there will be cost increase. And, like, depending on what happens with tariffs or, you know, exactly where they're applied in which countries, I mean, like, it sounds like there's going to be all different varied levels depending on the individual countries. So, you know, I'm sure that we're going to make adjustments as needed and try not to make any changes before we have some level of certainty as to what they're going to be. I mean, like, we kind of had like 3 days on with Mexico and China, you know, I mean, Canada, you know, like last month. And,
right.
You know, we didn't change prices at that point in time, but we certainly had to pay tariffs for those 3 days. So, I mean, like, it's like, oh my gosh, we don't really know. But, you know, we're going to try and be as smooth as we can so that everybody in the distribution chain can be as straightforward, honest, and dependable in their pricing to the consumers as possible. You know, that's our commitment.
Right. So our show, we have listeners in 81 countries across the world that listen to our show, and I just want to say this. Not one of them, so far as of right now, have to pay a tariff to listen to our show.
That's some good news.
Yes.
Tariff-free podcast.
Yes.
Oh, that's terrifying. So
Couldn't help yourself.
No, I couldn't help myself.
yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting time.
Yeah, I have relatives in Canada, a bunch of relatives in Canada, and they say, "Hey, call me when you get a chance." I go, there'll be a tariff if I call you. So.
Yeah. No. Well, I live in Maine, and you know, so Canadians are our neighbors, and that really it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, but this too shall pass.
Yes.
I think it's all temporary. I think so. We'll see what happens. Like you said, your crystal ball is just as cloudy as mine. So.
Yeah, well, right, you know, and I mean, like, you know, to the degree, and that really is this separating the signal from the noise. I mean, like, for the day-to-day things that we need to do, you know, it's still the same thing. It's like quality product, quality people, quality install, you know, make it happen and get out there and help people, and they're going to be able to depend on their heat and depend on you as a contractor, and that makes the world go round. So, you know, be good people doing good things is the change that we need, and you know, we're all on board with that and want to make sure that we have best outcomes for everybody.
It's good.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Go get some ice cream. Yeah. That's actually funny. So the last time we went to a couple weeks ago, me and Paul went to Vegas, and there was a buffet there, and they had all this different cuisine from different areas of the world. And then they had a dessert section, and Paul came back with a soft serve in a cone, a little twist vanilla chocolate in a cone. And I was like, oh, I want one of those. So I get up and I go get it, and I come back, and while I'm eating it, Paul leaves again. I'm like, where the hell is he going? Well, he comes back with more ice cream.
It's hard to resist. When all you have to do is pull a lever. You know?
Hold on. For the record, they were really small cones.
They were.
So my youngest, Sammy, has had a sweet tooth, and I mean, like, anything with sugar, he just loses his mind. When he was about 7 years old, we brought him and my oldest, which at the time was probably around 9 or 10, on the Disney cruise. Right? What they had on the upper deck was all the pizza you can eat. So my oldest, he's a pizza freak, and my youngest, it was all the soft serve and cones you can eat. So every time I seen him, because they were on the water slides and just doing their thing, every time I came around the corner, he had a cone in his hand. So I'm like, how many of those have you eaten since we've been here? Oh, just a few.
Just a couple.
So I know that he just kept going up to this machine, and I don't even know. Me and my wife didn't know how many ice cream cones he had.
17 today.
It was, it was. It made me think after. I'm like, oh no, but whatever.
Yeah, but look, he's working it all off. They're running around on the slides, so they're working it all off. So it all balances it out.
Yeah, and we were at the Cardinals game, and we're getting ready to leave for the night.
Oh yeah, I had to grab
Steve had a little to-go soft
my little
serve.
Sunday bar.
Yeah,
my Oreo cookie crumbles in there.
Yeah.
There was no. I was going to say Brussels sprouts.
Cauliflower.
No cauliflower.
Cauliflower
was hurt.
But Dana, you and I think, grew up with a town over from each other. But there used to be in Bolton, Hebert's Candy Mansion, and they used to have an ice cream bar there where you'd get this giant plate, and you could put up to 17 scoops of ice cream on there, and all the toppings that you can think of.
When I was in high school, and I was on the cross country team, and we would do these long distance runs all over town. Don Gribbins, the gripper, we would do 90 miles a week kind of thing. And one of our runs would go down past Hebert's, and we would get these huge sundaes mid-run and then run another 8 miles after that. And some of the guys would just hurl. It was a hilarious thing. Yeah. It's like, okay, who's going to lose it?
Could you imagine doing that right now?
Oh, man, it wouldn't go well. Wouldn't go well.
You know what the best thing about the Hebert's Candy Mansion is? What's the name of the street it's on?
Oh, it's on Sugar Road.
Sugar Road. That's the best thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, Dana, thank you so much for joining us once again. And as things change and update, we'll probably ask you to come back on.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and just love getting a chance to share. And always looking for feedback. My work is so informed by everyone out in the field, understanding where the pain points are, so that I can have our team pivot and do our part.
All right, and let's give out your cell phone number in case people have questions.
Definitely check out Dana's domain.
Yes.
METUS Training Network on YouTube.
Echo 8 X-ray 7.
Echo 8 X-ray 7.
All right, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.